Do you think you'll be able to own a home one day?
No, not actually own a home. Rent maybe, but not own.
No.
Why not?
Because too much money.
No, I don't think I will.
I would like to be able to, but it's pretty pricey, so probably rent.
I doubt it. I'm not confident.
It's no secret, there are some big hurdles for young Aussies to achieve the dream of owning a house. And for some, it doesn't seem like it'll ever be possible.
I hope so. I'm positive, but it's getting harder and harder each year.
No, it seems like it's going to be a housemate sort of situation for quite a long time.
When you take a look at the numbers, you can see where the sentiment comes from.
In the past decade, we've observed about a 27% increase in wages, with housing values rising at about 74% in the same period. The median income in Australia for the whole household before tax is about $100,000. We estimate the median property value in Australia is about 8 times that income.
So, congratulations! Yeah, according to CoreLogic, who are leaders in Australian property data and analytics, an average house will now cost you more than $800,000. Most people don't have that kind of cash just laying around, so they need to get a loan or mortgage from the bank. But to do that, you need to be able to pay a deposit, and that's the hurdle stopping many first-time buyers in their tracks.
Typically, 20% is the amount that you need to come up with in order to not be charged this thing called lender's mortgage insurance, LMI, which is basically insurance that the bank takes for themselves to insure the bank against you not being able to service the loan.
Assuming that the average household can save 15% of their income per year, to save a 20% deposit would take about 10.6 years. But this hasn't always been the case.
If we wind the clock back 40 years to 1984, you've got a terrible haircut, a cool jacket, and an average yearly paycheck of about $19,000. The average house costs $64,000, about 3 to 4 times your income, and a deposit is about 60% of a year's earnings. While that is significantly less than today, home buyers did face other challenges, mainly interest rates. Interest is basically the extra price you pay to borrow money from the bank, measured as a percent of the total loan amount. And in the 80s and 90s, interest was really high, peaking in 1990 at 17%.
Some people were paying really high portions of their income, even taking on second or third jobs, just to try and hold onto their home and service their mortgage.
Nowadays, interest is much lower, about 6.4%. But with much higher loan amounts, repayments can eat up as much, if not more than half of a $100,000 yearly income. And interest rates can rise or fall, taking with it the repayment costs.
This expensive upward trend has led to home ownership rates dropping from 71.4% to 66.2% in 25 years, as many young Aussies fall into what some call generation rent.
Rent's so expensive these days, and everything else is so expensive. All the costs together is impossible.
The problem with a declining home ownership rate in Australia is that owning a home has become really important both to wealth creation and ensuring that by the time you're retired and you're on a much lower level of income, you don't have to worry about housing costs.
So how did we get here?
I think there's less houses to how many people want to buy a house, so it's harder to afford a house.
Manufacturing and the price it is to make those goods, therefore the homes are going to be so much more, and yeah, that's what makes it difficult.
Well, like most things in economics, it comes back to supply and demand. Over the long term, we just haven't built enough for the amount of population growth that we've had, because the cost of debt has increased, the cost of holding land has increased, and construction materials and labour are much more expensive now than they were a few years ago. But the demand side is also really important. So we've had strong population growth, but housing in Australia is also pretty attractive to investors. So that has added to demand on top of the people who just need a home to live in.
Sold to you second grade.
According to PropTrack's latest housing affordability report, just 14% of homes sold across the country in the past year were affordable for the median income households, which is the lowest share since records began. This housing crisis is one of the biggest issues facing politicians heading into the federal election next year, and it's something all sides of Parliament say they're committed to fixing. But it isn't easy.
For homeowners, they don't necessarily want to see the value of their home fall dramatically, but for those in the rental market, obviously that would be the ideal. As long as you have more people who own a home than don't, which we currently do, then that becomes a real political challenge to enforce policies that make prices come down.
I'll come right down, I'll take a $1,000 increment.
Since the 2022 election, the federal government has announced $32 billion worth of new housing to boost supply. And if the opposition win the next election, they'll commit $5 billion to developing infrastructure like roads and water supply, which they say will help get houses built faster. Other parties like the Greens have also pushed for things like a rent freeze to help tenants save more money. But not everyone is confident in the politicians. See, more than 65% of current politicians own more than one property, and some people reckon that many are out of touch with regular Aussies. Something Prime Minister Anthony Albanese was accused of after his purchase of a $4.3 million house in New South Wales recently.
I earn a good income. I understand that. I understand that I've been fortunate. But I also know what it's like to struggle. My mum lived in the one public housing that she was born in for all of her 65 years. And I know what it's like, which is why I want to help all Australians into a home.
It's blatantly unfair that they're the ones getting to make the decisions about the rules for landlords and the cost of living.
They're living kind of with everything. We're living with not much. It's hard for them to make the calls of how they want to run it and how, or what's best for everybody in general.
I reckon they should rent them out to people for lower, people who are struggling with money and stuff, you know?
If people have been successful enough to make the money to own a house, I think they should be able to go for it. But maybe they just need to then work harder to make it fair for everyone else, give other people good opportunity to achieve the same level of wealth that they have.
The Prime Minister has the top job. If he wants to buy a big, beautiful coastal home to live in, I don't think that's so much of a big deal, even though the timing is not great, where housing is probably going to be at the centre of the 2025 federal election. But it's the amount of politicians that have property portfolios and investment properties that is maybe a little bit more concerning when some people are struggling to just buy one home to live in.
There is still a lot of work to do to solve this crisis, but it's something that teens today can help change for themselves and others in the future.
You might want to think about ways that you can get into home ownership in a less conventional way, like looking to a cheaper regional part of the country, or maybe think of buying a smaller unit. But it's really hard to sit there and tell people that they need to work around this system that is broken to make it work for them. I think the best advice I can give to young people about home ownership is get political, get informed, and use your vote to improve our housing system.
Yeah, no, there needs to be some sort of reform.
There's a lot of student allowances and stuff, so for those people who really are desperate for housing, I think a good strategy would be to increase those payment rates so that they can get into the housing market.
I think just for there to be more houses in general, or apartments, so there's not so much competition. I hope I can have a house, I really do. Even if it's just a small house, I'll be happy.
I think maybe not in the next 5 years, but 10 or so, I think it'll slowly get better for us, yeah.
Yours! Congratulations, well done.